I'm a product manager, so I get to build the future of mobile. The fantastic thing is actually in about 20 minutes, Russell is going to talk about the future of mobile. I'm going to completely steal his thunder by showing it to you instead, which I figured might be a bit more interesting. So the good news is we are shipping some of the things now that you probably would have thought were science fiction a few years ago. And we're really taking advantage of the power of modern mobile devices, and I'm going to show you some of those things today. One of the things we're really taking advantage of is the power of the modern browser. And most of my presentation today is going to be brought by the letters H, T, M, L, and the number 5. So we're going to be talking a lot about browsers, but before we dive into the detail about that, let's talk a little bit about the way we think at Google, because we tend to look at distant trends, and we believe that you should really bet on the trend and lose out to it. We've seen some great examples today of brands who were already engaged with mobile and engaged with mobile advertising. And at Google, we believe now is the right time to invest. When we launched Gmail back in 2004, we were betting on a long-term trend. We knew that the price of storage was going to fail. So when we offered everyone 2 gig of email storage, which now you don't think 2 gigs that much, back then another popular webmail provider gave you 25 meg. And we suddenly announced 2 gig. Who here is a Gmail user, by the way? Hands up. Keep your hand up if you've run out of space. You haven't, Nick. Put your hand down. You're just a bit slow. Thank you. If you have, see me afterwards and I can sort it out. Great example, we were betting on the future. If people had needed 2 gig on April the 2nd, it would have been really expensive, but we know that the cost of storage halves every year, so we could bet on that long-term trend and give people that. As I say, everybody thought it was an April Fool because we launched it on April the 1st. Another example of betting on the long-term trend is YouTube. Way back in 2005, it was really hard to create video. Camcorders were still £800 or £900. Your internet connection was so slow that even if you had a piece of video, getting it into the cloud was almost impossible. It would take an age over a modem or the upstream connection on broadband. And even if you did get it into the cloud, and as Ian kindly said, I've been working in the mobile industry a long time, despite my extreme youth. And way back on the desktop, 4 or 5 years ago, if you wanted to watch a video, there were 4 or 5 links down the side. One said, if you have QuickTime, click here. One said, if you have Windows Media Player, click here. One said, if you have Linux, don't bother. And that was a big challenge. But we bet, and the guys at YouTube bet on that long-term trend, that video would be important on the web. So we now see you can create great video on a phone. The cost of a CCD, the chip that converts the light into electrical impulses, has fallen. The cost of bandwidth has fallen. It's much easier to get your little video into the cloud now and share it with the world. And we've got a ubiquitous media player, which is Flash, ubiquitous on open platforms, of course. So finally, looking at long-term trends, we launched voice search back in 2008. I'm going to show quite a few voice demos today. When we started that, it was almost impossible to do on mobile devices. They didn't have the processing power. We couldn't compress the speech. We didn't have the network capacity. We couldn't get the data into the cloud fast enough, and we didn't have the computing power in the cloud. But we knew that those things would come. And right now, today, for example, on a Nexus 1, there's actually a background microphone which is continually, when you're speaking, sampling the background noise and filtering that out from your signal so we get even clearer voice. So you can see all this technology is coming together, and at Google we bet on those long-term trends, and by the end of this year we'll have 20 languages in voice search. We've already done some of the hardest ones in the world, big challenges like Mandarin Chinese and Japanese, and by the end of next year we think we'll probably have around 40 languages, so very aggressive expansion there. So how does that translate into mobile, and why do we think the browser will win? Why are we saying that the browser is this long-term trend? Well, a number of reasons. The first of those is that open standards win in the long term. The web is a fantastic open standard. Email is a fantastic open standard. People can innovate. People can build things on these open platforms. Everyone in this room can develop for the web. There's no development cost. There's no licensing fees. Who here has a text editor on their machine? You all do. You can all be web developers tomorrow. Great to hear from AutoTrader that users don't really care. They just want to interact with your services. Give them something good. It doesn't have to be an app. It can be in the browser. Fantastic to see that borne out by real data. And the great thing is your app lives on the server, so immediately you update it, all your users have the latest version. There's no installation issues, even though it's got much, much easier and better to install mobile apps, you won't have those issues. You can experiment quickly. We've all learned that the web is a fantastic playground for trying things, change your interface, change the order of things, do experiments and learn rapidly and learn quickly and move on. And of course, there's no approvals, no one stands in the way of your app going live on the web, one of the fantastic things about it. Now, who's at this party? You say, well, everyone's using WebKit. Android, the iPhone operating system, Nokia, LG, Samsung, Palm, RIM, all of those devices are now all moving to WebKit. So you really do have the opportunity to target one platform. And you can even reuse significant elements of your desktop experience. As we've seen today, you can often transcode and get things working. So I'm not going to spend very long on this slide, but just some of the technology. You can now use Canvas. You can do real-time graphics and drawing on a mobile device. We'll have video. We'll see HTML5 video coming out very strongly in the next year. You can use geolocation. I'm going to show you Google Maps running on an iPad, able to detect the user's location. We have the app cache. That lets you do things offline. Very often mobile users don't have a connection. They're on the tube, if they haven't checked with Nick first to find out how the status is, and they're out of signal. But your app, your site can still work if you use HTML5 and this technology. And finally, almost the last dull bullet point in my presentation, I hope, worker threads. Pretty boring, but allow you to build really great interactive experiences because the user interface is separate from processing. So if you have to upload a picture to the web, do it in a separate thread, and the user still gets a fast and fluid experience. So life is a lot easier for mobile developers. So I'm now going to show you the iPad user guide, which is also a web app. So even Apple, they can have an app. So, I can actually find out all about my iPad, and I'm tapping away here, but if I move this down, you'll actually see I'm working in a web browser. So really, really easy to do this kind of thing. Let's look at something even more interactive. I have a Twitter client. So there we can see I've got all of my Twitter controls, all done in a browser. Really, really straightforward. And I think one of the most impressive examples, Paddy Power's web app. Look at this app. I can scroll across the different sports. I can drill down. So let's see into the Suwon game. So let's see, 6-1 on the draw, and I can click through and bet. All of this being done in a web app. So again, Paddy Power able to experiment, to learn and to iterate really, really rapidly, just as they could on the web. And I want to show you one thing on my laptop now. This laptop has an accelerometer in, like many phones. It knows which way up is. I'm just showing you this in Chromium because we hacked it together as a demo the other day. Not so useful on a laptop. But in tablet world, the browser knowing which way up it is pretty important. So you can imagine the kind of things, the kind of fun that developers are going to have with access to both the accelerometer and the gyros in these modern devices. So also, another quick demo of voice input. Google Translate. Very, very easy for me to do something like this.
How long will it take me to get to the airport by taxi?
Voice input into the device. It's translated it, and my Spanish accent isn't great, so I'm going to do this.
¿Cuánto tiempo tardaré en llegar al aeropuerto en taxi?
It's way better than my comprehensive school French, I assure you. So again, using the power of these modern computing devices, some things we can't do in a browser. That's an example right now, but we're working with the standards bodies to make that work. One other thing we can't do in the browser, we can't access the camera on the device, but in Google Goggles we can. And that gives me some great opportunities. So I have on screen here a picture of a bottle of wine. Take a quick picture of the label. Goggles is scanning that. And Goggles has recognised that it was Cape Red Cellars Chardonnay. I can scroll down and I can see how much it would cost. I can see where I can buy it from. There we are. I can get through to prices and buy it very, very easily. I just took a picture on the screen. I also have, and I'll try and, it's kind of hard to get this synced up. I now have a picture of the Royal Opera House up here, so I'm going to grab that very, very quickly with Google Goggles. And Google Goggles is running on Android right now, so taking my picture, you'll see that picture of the Royal Opera House. Almost immediately there, it's recognised it, Covent Garden Opera House, and I can click through, I can find out what's on. So we're connecting users from their intent almost immediately, whether it's speaking their query, seeing something in the real world when they're lost for words, they don't know what's in front of them. What's that building? What's that poster? And finding out about that. It is very, very early days for for image recognition technology. So right now, we can't do things like clothing. Lots of brands ask us about that. We can't do furniture. We're also not very good at recognizing animals. And my final demo is voice actions on a phone. There's a lot of things you want to do on a phone besides just search the web, believe it or not. So I'll just zoom out a little bit here, and I'm going to show you, I can very quickly and easily, just with one tap, call Hugo Barra. There we go. Immediately, within seconds, I'm calling. I don't actually need to speak to Hugo right now, so I'm going to cancel that. Another demo. Imagine I'm planning a shopping trip and I want to make it slightly less tedious. I might do something like this. Map of restaurants near Harrods. Now, ordinarily, you would have to open Maps, do your query in Maps. You can do this in one go. And there we go. It's switched into Maps. It's doing a search. I'm just going to flip my phone the right way up. And at the top of the screen, you can see there's even an ad, so you can click right through and find out about restaurants near Harrods. And finally, one more voice action, very, very handy. Again, getting the user from their intent right through to what they want. Navigate to Regent's Park. So immediately, it's done the speech recognition. It's going to count down, make sure that it's got what I want, and start the Android satellite navigation, which will tell me exactly how long it's going to take me. There we go, 13 minutes to get to Regent's Park, up Gray's Inn Road. So you can do phenomenal things in the browser. We're going to be adding more and more technology to these devices, but I do want to emphasize it's worth experimenting with apps, but you really should be thinking about both.